There are specific hours of the day when the Kabbalistic tradition identified a contraction of the spiritual flow, and signing contracts, closing deals, or making financial decisions during those hours is something that the wise carefully avoided. Shalom, shalom. It's great to have you here today. I want to start with a question that may seem strange but has a very serious answer. What time did you sign the last important contract of your life? Or close the last deal? Or make the last significant financial decision? Do you remember? And more importantly, did you choose that time with any criteria beyond availability? Most people sign when the other party is available, when the lawyer has an opening, when the bank opens, when urgency presses. The timing is determined by the external, always by the external. And the Kabbalistic tradition has a perspective that completely inverts this logic. Today, we will enter a teaching that the wise preserved within the most serious circles of study about Sha'ot Hayom, the hours of the day, and how each hour carries a distinct spiritual quality that directly affects the field in which financial decisions are made. Not as superstition, as a map. And those who have the map navigate more wisely than those who only have urgency. If this teaching resonates with you, subscribe now and activate the bell. And tell me in the comments, have you ever had the experience of signing something, closing a deal, and having the immediate feeling that something was not right, even without an apparent reason? Let me tell you a parable that comes from the tradition I inherited. A story that my grandfather used when someone in the family was about to make a financial decision in haste. Imagine a Jewish lawyer in a trading city in Central Europe who had the reputation of never losing a client in poorly made contracts. Not because he was smarter than the other lawyers, but because he had a criterion that the others did not have. One day, a client came to him urgently. He needed to sign an important contract that afternoon at 3 o'clock because the other side had no other availability. The lawyer looked at the clock, then looked at the client, and calmly said, "We can sign at 3, but I need you to understand what it means to sign at 3. The client grew impatient. "What does it matter with 3 in the afternoon?" The lawyer replied, "At 3 in the afternoon, we are in the hour of din, the hour of judgment, of contraction, of the force that examines and exposes. It is the hour when mistakes appear more clearly than possibilities. Contracts signed at this hour tend to reveal their problems before revealing their benefits. If we can move to 10 in the morning tomorrow, we move to the hour of chesed, of expansion, of mercy, of openness. If you can't wait, we sign now, but with double awareness of each clause." The client waited until the next morning, and according to my family's story, that was the calmest contract he ever executed. This parable carries today's central teaching. Today, you will discover 3 things. First, what Kabbalah teaches about Sha'ot Hayom, the planetary hours of the day, and how each hour carries a specific spiritual influence that the sages have accurately mapped over centuries of observation and transmission. Second, what the 7 specific hours are that tradition identifies as having the greatest contraction for financial initiatives, and what each of them represents in the spiritual cycle of the day. Third, the practical protocol of Seder HaSha'ot, the ordering of the hours, a concrete guide to position your most important financial actions at the moments of greatest openness of the day. Let's start with the foundation. In Jewish and Kabbalistic tradition, time is not a uniform line where all hours have the same spiritual weight. The concept of Sha'ot Hayom, the hours of the day, is deeply rooted in both ancient astronomy and Kabbalah. The sages taught that each hour of the day is governed by a specific spiritual influence that corresponds to one of the Sephirot, the divine emanations that we study repeatedly in this channel. This is not a marginal or esoteric idea. The Talmud references the quality of the hours in multiple places. The great decisors of Jewish law throughout history have commented on favorable and unfavorable times for different types of action. And the Zohar extensively explores the relationship between the hours of the day and the state of the spiritual field available to the human being at each moment. The basis of the teaching is this. Just as the days of the week have segulot, specific qualities that we studied in a previous outline, the hours of the day also have specific qualities. And these qualities are not arbitrary. They follow a pattern that the sages have mapped out and can be learned and used with practical wisdom. Now let's delve into the specific map of the hours, and the 7 that today's teaching identifies as having the greatest contraction for financial initiatives. The fundamental principle is this. The hours of the day alternate between moments of expansion, hitpashitut, and moments of contraction, histalkut. The hours of expansion correspond to the sefirot of Chesed, Tiferet, and Netzach, mercy, beauty, and victory. The hours of contraction correspond to the sefirot of Gvura, Hod, and Yesod in their aspect of containment, strength, recognition, and foundation in a mode of restriction. The first hour of contraction is the hour of transition from dawn to full day, approximately between 6 and 7 in the morning, depending on the time of year. This hour corresponds to the moment when the light of Shahar, the dawn we studied, is being replaced by the light of Or Hayom, the light of the established day. It is a time of transition, a passage between two states. The sages identified transitional hours as moments of spiritual instability. The field has not yet settled into the new state. Financial decisions made during transitional hours tend to carry the instability of the moment itself. The second hour of contraction is around noon, the hour of solar culmination. This may be surprising because it seems to be the point of greatest strength of the day. And it is precisely for this reason that it is problematic for contracts. It is the hour of maximum exposure, maximum visibility, and maximum vulnerability to the gaze of din, of judgment. The Talmud mentions that Mazmul Hatzaharayim, or the demon of noon, is a metaphor for the force of contraction and exposure that this moment carries. It is not the best time to put something new under maximum exposure. The third hour of contraction comes right after noon, between 1 and 2 in the afternoon. It is the moment of initial solar decay, when the force of the day begins to decline. The Kabbalists identified this as a moment of yeridah, of descent, of falling intensity. Agreements made during moments of yeridah carry the quality of decline even before they begin. The fourth and fifth hours of contraction are those that the lawyer in our parable mentioned, the mid-afternoon, between 2 and 4 in the afternoon. This period corresponds to the hours of the most intense din of the day. Tradition is consistent at this point. This afternoon period, especially the third hour of the afternoon according to the calculation of Hebrew hours, is the moment of greatest force of contraction and judgment. The Talmud associates events of difficulty and exposure to this period with a frequency that the sages did not treat as coincidence. The sixth hour of contraction is the hour of Bein Hashmashot, the twilight, the period of ambiguity between day and night. Just like the transition of dawn, this moment of passage between two states carries instability. What is initiated in twilight simultaneously belongs to two states, and this ambiguity tends to manifest in the nature of what has been initiated. And the seventh hour of contraction, the most obvious but often ignored, is any hour in which a person's inner state is in contraction, regardless of the clock. Anxiety, fear, forced urgency, artificial deadline pressure. The sages taught that a person's inner field in contraction transforms any hour into an hour of din, because the vessel that will receive the agreement is already in restriction mode before the agreement begins. There is a concept in Kabbalah called Eit Ratzon, the time of will, the opportune moment, the hour when the field is open to receive. Psalm 69 says, "And I, my prayer is to you, Eternal, in Eit Ratzon." And the sages have extensively commented on what creates an Eit Ratzon. It is not just the timing. It is the combination of the favorable timing with the inner state aligned with the inner state of the Creator, which is always expansion, always chesed, always openness to the tov. This has an immediate practical implication for contracts and financial decisions. The favorable external hour without the favorable internal state is still not Eit Ratzon. And the favorable internal state, without awareness of the external field, may encounter resistance that could have been avoided. The ideal is the convergence of the two, the hour of chesed meeting the person in a state of chesed. Imagine someone like Christina, a businesswoman, quick decision-maker, who had a consistent pattern of closing well-intentioned deals that later revealed unexpected problems. When she was introduced to this teaching and began to retrospectively map the most problematic deals in her professional history, she found something that surprised her. A significant proportion of them had been signed in the afternoon, especially between 2 and 4, or in moments of external urgency that did not allow for a choice of timing. I'm not saying that the timing caused the problems. I'm saying that the pattern was consistent enough for her to recognize something she hadn't named before. When she started applying the Seder HaSha'ot to her financial decisions, moving the possible to the hours of Chesed and rejecting artificial urgency during the hours of Din, what she reported was a different quality in the agreements. Fewer unpleasant surprises, less sense that there was something she had not seen. This is clearly an illustration, but the pattern it represents is one of the most recognizable among people who study this subject seriously. Now, the central Hebrew terms for this teaching. The first is Sha'ot Hayom, the hours of the day. Not in the modern sense of 60 equal minutes, but in the sense of Hebrew hours, which vary in duration depending on the season, dividing the period between dawn and sunset into 12 equal parts. The sages calculated Hebrew hours to determine prayer and action times, a system of spiritual precision that recognizes that living time is not uniform as the mechanical clock suggests. The second is Eit Ratzon, the time of divine will, the opportune moment. The moment when the outer field and the inner state converge to create maximum openness for the Shefa. Cultivating the perception of Eit Ratzon, learning to recognize when it is present and when it is not, is one of the most sophisticated forms of spiritual alignment with the flow of prosperity. The third is Din, judgment, rigor, the quality of Gevura in its most austere face. Din is not necessarily negative. Without Din, there is no structure, no law, no form. But Din, as an environment for new financial beginnings, creates a field where what is examined is exposed before being protected. Contracts under Din are contracts that reach the court before reaching prosperity. The fourth is Chesed, mercy, generosity, expansion. The sephira that the wise associated with the right side, with the morning, with the flow of opening. Actions initiated in hours of Chesed carry the quality of expansion. They tend to reveal their benefits before revealing their problems, the opposite of Din for the purposes of financial initiatives. And the fifth is Seder HaSha'ot, the ordering of the hours, the principle of aligning your actions with the spiritual quality of the moment, not as rigidity that paralyzes when the ideal time is not available, but as a compass that, when followed in the choices that can be made, produces a different quality in the results over time. Now the complete protocol. This tikkun is called Tikkun HaSha'ot, the correction of the hours, and you will implement it at 3 levels of depth over the next 4 weeks. Level 1. The map of favorable hours. For your typical day, identify the periods of greatest openness. In most Brazilian latitudes, the most consistent hours of Chesed are the early hours of the morning after Shachar, between 7 and 9 in the morning, and the period between 10 in the morning and noon. These are the moments when the field is at its maximum expansion of the daily cycle. Mark these periods on your calendar as priority windows for important financial decisions. Level 2. The Conscious Postponement Protocol. Whenever you feel pressure to sign, close, or decide at an unfavorable time, especially between 2 and 4 in the afternoon, practice what the wise called imea, deliberate pause. Don't refuse immediately. Say, "Can I confirm tomorrow morning?" Or, "Can I review and sign first thing tomorrow?" In most cases, not all, but most, this is possible. And when it is possible, it is wise. Level 3. The inner state as a variable. Before any significant financial decision, regardless of the time, take a 30-second inner check. Ask, am I in Chesed or in Din right now? Am I expanded or contracted? Am I acting out of openness or out of fear? If the answer is contraction, fear, or artificial urgency, and the timing can be moved, move it. If it cannot be moved, act with double awareness and ask the Eternal for His mercy to cover what the timing does not favor. Additional step, the timing diary. For 4 weeks, note the timing of every financial decision you make, big or small. At the end of the 4 weeks, review. Is there a pattern between the smoother agreements and the timing they were made? Is there a pattern between those that revealed problems and the time of day they were initiated? This diary will build your own map of experience, not based on theory, but on direct observation of your life. About the specific resistance to this teaching. The first resistance is the most common. Business doesn't wait. The business world doesn't operate on spiritual timings. For this, the answer is precise. The teaching does not ask you to refuse opportunities because of the timing. It asks that you, when you have a choice, and more often than it seems, you do have a choice, Use that choice wisely. When there is no choice, act with awareness. It is not rigidity, it is a compass. The second resistance is philosophical. Doesn't this attribute power to a time that does not exist? Isn't it my effort and my wisdom that determine the outcome? In Jewish tradition, human effort, hishtadlut, is sacred and obligatory. But hishtadlut without bitachon, without trust in the divine structure of the world, is effort without anchoring. The Seder HaSha'ot does not replace effort. It adds wisdom to effort. It is the difference between a competent farmer and a competent farmer who also knows the seasons. The third resistance is excess, using this teaching to procrastinate, to avoid difficult decisions, to justify inaction with "the timing is not favorable." For this, the teaching has its own answer. The seventh hour of contraction that we identify is the inner state of contraction, and procrastinating out of fear is din disguised as wisdom. The Tikkun HaSha'ot is for those who act and want to act with more intelligence, not for those who avoid action and seek spiritual justification for inaction. Today you learned that the hours of the day, the Sha'ot Hayom, carry distinct spiritual qualities that affect the field in which financial decisions are made. You identified the 7 hours of greatest contraction, the transitions of dawn and dusk, the midday of maximum exposure, the hour after midday of Yeridah, the afternoon period of intense din, and the inner hour of contraction that any moment can become when the inner state is in fear. You learned the 5 central terms, Sha'ot Hayom, 8 Ratzon, Din, Chesed, and Seder HaSha'ot. And you now have the Tikkun HaSha'ot, 3 levels of implementation to start this week. If you apply this map and notice something, a difference in the quality of agreements made during the hours of Chesed, a confirmation of the pattern when reviewing past decisions, a feeling of more clarity when acting at the right moment, I would love to hear. Share in the comments. These accounts help others take this teaching from theory to real life. And now, before you go, I want to bless you. May the Eternal, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, grant you the wisdom to recognize the 8 Ratzon, the moment when the field is open and His will is for expansion and Chesed. May He give you the patience to wait for this moment when artificial urgency tries to push you towards din. May every contract you sign, every agreement you close, every decision you make be anchored both in your honest effort and in His wise structure of time. May the Seder HaSha'ot that you learned today become second nature, a sense of spiritual rhythm that guides your actions without you needing to calculate anymore, because wisdom has already dwelled within you. And may the Shefa that flows in the hours of Chesed always find you present, open, and ready to receive. Ken Yehi Ratzon. So be it. Amen. If this teaching was helpful to you, leave a like. It helps the channel reach more people seeking this type of wisdom. Subscribe and activate the bell, and share with someone you feel signs things incorrectly at the wrong time and who is ready to start doing differently. Next week, we will finally arrive at the teaching about Ayin Tov, the good eye, and how the way you look at the prosperity of others is directly shaping the channel of your own Shefa. A teaching that will challenge something very deeply rooted. Don't miss it. Until then, Shalom.